Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and hopefully build upon some of the information that CIBC presented for us this morning. My goal today is just to provide an overview of some of the major economic indicators that we keep an eye on throughout the year, drilling into some of those more specific data sets and providing council just an overview of where things are looking at the end of 2021 and as we move into 2022. I will then sort of review a number of the major projects that we see happening within the region that have the potential to drive further economic activity, and then close out with a bit of a summary of what we're hearing from our local businesses. This slide probably looks fairly familiar to a number of council members, but I just wanted to take a quick second and sort of set the baseline for a number of the statistics that we're looking at today. So the city of Grande Prairie has a population of just over 69,000. We have been very fortunate with steady, high rates of growth throughout our history. We realized an annual population growth rate of 3.69 between 2000 and 2018. And we are a young, vibrant community, as we like to tell everybody, with a median age of 31.9. So in July, the province released population projections for the census divisions. This is not a totally focused-in look at the city. The census division includes the city, the county, all of the towns and villages within their borders, and reaches out to Peace River, Fairview, Spirit River. So it's quite a broad area. It encompasses a number of areas that have an older demographic generally and see slower rates of growth than we do within the city. However, within that study, the province did predict that the city, or our census division, is predicted to be the third fastest growing across Alberta, just behind Calgary and Edmonton, predicting an average annual growth rate of 1.59% annually between now and 2046. Just to provide a little bit of context to that, according to the projections, they are estimating that our current census division currently has approximately 128,000 people, with prediction to grow to 193,000 by 2046. In terms of population growth and the components of population growth, the data that we receive from StatsCan is looked at from a July to June time period. So the most recent data that we have available captures up until July 2020. As you can see through the center there, that blue line is our strong natural population growth rate. So that's the net natural population growth. And we typically see over 1,000 births a year, between 1,000 to 1,500 generally. And this has remained really strong throughout most recent history. International migration is the green bar that you see along the top there. We consistently see between 700 to 1,000 net immigrants coming to our community each year. Because of the time frame that this data is looking at, we won't see the real impacts of that green bar as a result of COVID-19 until I'm sitting in front of you next year. So something to keep in mind as we are looking forward. Interprovincial migration, you can see through the last couple of years, has dipped into a negative migration between the provinces. Last year, we lost a net 104 people overall to interprovincial migration. And this is not unique to Grande Prairie. It is something that we're starting to see more and more across the data sets in Alberta. And in terms of intra-provincial migration, so people moving within the province, we typically lose more people than we gain from other parts of Alberta, with one exception in 2017, 2018. So last year, according to the data, we lost 412 people. Historically, when we dig into this a little bit further, we see it's really between that 18 to 30-year-old, and typically tends to skew more female. And so overall, last year, we saw a net gain of 744 people, down slightly from the previous year, which saw a net increase of 912. The screen here shows our unemployment rate. Anybody that's heard me speak before has probably heard me mention the problems that we have with this data. The unemployment and employment data that we have is reported for our economic region, which is essentially all of Western Alberta. It captures Banff, Jasper, Athabasca, Rocky Mountain House, a number of communities with very diverse and different labor force needs and labor force trends. So it's not a pure representation of what's really happening within the city, but it is a good indicator of sort of our broader economic region. As you can see, in October 2021, our unemployment rate remained consistent at 7.1%. This is down from October of 2020, where we reached 10.9. Provincially, the unemployment rate saw a decrease from 8.4% to 7.7% in October. Within our economic region, you can see the labor force there. We did lose approximately 27,000 people who were previously employed that have since left the labor force, according to the statistics. Moving into some of our residential and building activities here. So in terms of residential sales, year to date, as of October, we have seen 1,220 sales within the city. This is up 28% from the same time last year, which saw 954, and 2% above where we were sitting this time in 2019. Year to date, the average sale price, including both new builds and resale, is approximately $316,822. It's very consistent with where we've seen prices over the last number of years. We generally only see fluctuation of approximately 1% from year to year. Year to date, we have seen 108 residential starts. It's a 14.9% increase over 2020. I will dive into this data a little bit further on the next slide, but I did want to just highlight the rental vacancy data below. The rental vacancy data that we have comes from the CMHC Rental Market Survey. It's a single point-in-time count. So the counts are conducted in October of each year, and the information is generally released by July. Because of the nature of the data, it does also have some challenges in that it really only captures one point in time and doesn't give us a good indication of the trends or what we're seeing in the market. You can see here, as of in October 2020, CMHC is estimating our vacancy rate to be 10.7%. The other challenge with this data is they're looking at apartment buildings, largely 3 units or more. So it doesn't capture the large secondary suite market and single-family homes that are available for rental within the market. We did do a survey this week and spoke to a number of the local property managers just to get a sense of what they were hearing. We heard a big range of responses from one company who had less than 1% vacancy, only had 1 or 2 units left available, and on the higher end, we heard up to 30% vacancy. When we took the responses, it averaged out to about 13%. We did hear some really good stories, some really interesting anecdotes through this exercise. We're starting to see an increase of residents or new residents who own homes elsewhere that are moving to the city and occupying rentals, indicating that Grande Prairie and the job opportunities that they have here are making it worthwhile to finance a second resident in Grande Prairie. So now the challenge, I guess, will be to convert them into permanent residents. We're also hearing a number of stories about nurses and other medical professionals relocating to the area. This is, it seemed from chatting with the companies locally, this almost seems to be within just the last couple of months, there's been a noticeable increase of nurses and other medical staff relocating. So that was really encouraging to hear. So going back to the residential starts, again, this is based on the CMHC data. So this data is calculated once they start to see that vertical construction. It's visible in the ground, which would explain why it doesn't always line up perfectly with the building permit data. Year to date, we have seen 71 single-family starts and 37 multifamily starts. It's a 14.9% increase from last year's 60 and 34, respectively. Of those multifamily starts, the CMHC is reporting 12 semi-detached, 6-row, and 19 apartments. I do like to show this slide as opposed to the chart on the previous slide, just because it shows the trend line over the last number of years, and you can really get a sense of activity. So as I mentioned, the building start data doesn't always necessarily directly correlate with our building permit data, but building permits are a really good indicator for economic health. They are a leading indicator and give a good indication of intent. So I will take a look, walk council through this data 2 ways here. This here shows the building permit data in terms of volume. So you can see the residential permits form the vast majority of the permits issued each year. But when we take a look at the building permits in terms of their value, You can see that the commercial, the gold bar along the bottom, takes up a big chunk of the value that we're seeing from our building permits. So year to date, 557 building permits worth over 76 million have been issued, compared to 591 permits worth just over 69 millions for the same period in 2020. So this is a 5% decrease in permit volume, but it represents a 9% increase in terms of construction value. We have seen a relatively strong commercial permits with $39.8 million year to date this year. That would incorporate a lot of the commercial development happening on the east side of the city, as well as significant renovations to the Southview Safeway, and a number of tenant improvements and other commercial properties improvements throughout the city. So taking a step back from residential and taking a look at our energy sector, as was highlighted in the previous presentation, energy is an important driver for our local economy, and it's one of the easiest ones for us to track in terms of our permits, or in terms of data points to actually take a look at. So well licenses, similar to the building permits, is a great indicator, a leading indicator of intent. Year to date, in 2021, we've seen 616 drilling licenses issued within the Grande Prairie region so far. This is compared to 314 in 2020, which is an increase of 96%. Of the licenses issued to date, 237 are for oil, 370 for gas, and 9 for other industry-related wells. This is compared to 101 for oil, 206 for gas, and 7 for other industry wells, other industry-related wells for the same period in 2020. This chart here has a lot of data, but it is a snapshot of the region's top producers. Typically, I only look at the most recent year for comparison, but in this case, we felt it was worthwhile to show a little bit of a perspective and include 2019. So this takes a look at the top 10 producers from the past 3 years. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there's been a number of mergers and acquisitions within the region, most notably the ARC Resources and Seven Generations merger. So the 2021 data with the 99 well licenses attributed to ARC Resources, that's everything that was pulled by Seven Generations prior to the merger, and ARC Resources under their new name and position. Last year, when I reported on this data, I spoke a little bit about CNRL and their acquisitions in the BC Montney, as well as Tourmaline and their acquisition of Jupiter Resources and Modern Resources, which were 2 of Grande Prairie's top 20 resources, or top 20 producers. And I spoke a little bit how we would likely see Tourmaline start to move up within those well licenses counts. And so you can see in 2021, they pulled 35 well licenses up from the 12 in 2020. So similar to the building permits versus housing starts, drilling completions really are the truth tellers. So they show where the activity has actually happened. And year-to-date completions are up 82%, with 635 completions to date in 2021, compared to 369 for the same period in 2020. We also are sitting 36% above the same period in 2019. So this slide, again, there's a lot of information here, but every year in preparation for this, we like to do a little bit of a tabletop exercise, taking a look at all of the major projects that are either planned or in progress within the broader Grande Prairie or economic region. This information here is largely pulled from the Alberta Major Projects database. Some of the valuations on here are a little bit out of date, but we do really tend to rely on what the province is reporting in terms of the valuation and the project progress. The main point of this slide here is to highlight the $12 billion of planned and proposed projects. Typically, when we're pulling this number, we're seeing between 8 and 9 billion, but to see the jump to 12 this year is an impressive number. And this is a combination of energy projects, recent announcements with the petrochemical development in the MD of Greenview, as well as government provincial infrastructure projects such as the Highway 40 twinning. I should also mention a number of these projects, are pipeline projects. So those are very regional projects. It's not to suggest that the full $2.3 billion of the NGTL project is happening directly within Grand Prairie, but those are key pieces of infrastructure to ensure that we're connected to the Edmonton region and to support our local economy and support those well licenses and employment within drilling and energy activity. So I will just dive into a couple of the projects. I've sort of picked and choose a few for Council's information this morning. But Nautical Energy is a project we're very excited about. It is a $4 billion carbon neutral blue methanol facility planned for just south of the city in the county of Grand Prairie. They are estimating construction to begin by the end of 2022, 2023, and have a target of being fully operational by 2028. They have divided the project out as it has expanded in scope and built in 2 phases. So they are anticipating both phases to be fully operational by 2028. This project represents 5,000 construction jobs provincially. That includes 3,000 directly through the engineering, fabrication, and construction, plus an additional 2,000 indirect construction jobs through upstream gas producers and local services that will largely be located within the Grand Prairie region. It is also anticipated to support 250 direct operating jobs on site within their offices and within the facility, in addition to 1,000 indirect jobs through spin-off services and support services. Our newest announcement, the Northern Petrochemical Corporation, has announced a $2.5 billion facility for the MD of Greenview, located within the Greenview Industrial Gateway. They're also anticipated to begin construction 2023 with a target operation fully operational by 2027. They are anticipating 4,000 construction jobs and 400 operating jobs. This is an exciting development for the region with global methanol demand increasing. There's been a number of predictions around the number of methanol facilities that Grand Prairie could feasibly support through our feedstock and our resources. And so we would expect to, where we see 1 methanol plant, we see 2, we see 3. Generally, we would anticipate in sort of that longer term forecast to see 4 to 5 methanol plants within the region. So that's 4 to 5, $2 to $4 billion investments with thousands of construction jobs and hundreds of operating jobs. So this is exciting to see a second announcement and start to build out this cluster within the region. So I did mention the Greenview Industrial Gateway. A number of council was able to join for the announcement and the event that we attended a few weeks ago. The Greenview Industrial Gateway it's planned to be a world-class eco-industrial park, the Center for Natural Gas Processing in Canada. It is located 40 kilometers south of the city in the MD of Greenview and is approximately 32,000 hectares. The goal of the project is to reduce barriers to large-scale industrial development. Nautical and NPC are examples of the types of projects that we would expect to see attracted to this region, so that larger scale heavy industrial uses. This district provides the advantage of providing pre-planning for infrastructure utility corridors and helping to reduce some of those barriers to this large-scale type of development and positioned to compete with other heavy industrial parks such as the Alberta Industrial Heartland in the Edmonton area. Of course, my favorite project that I get asked about every presentation, the Grand Prairie Regional Hospital. We're very excited to see it opening this weekend. This is a huge opportunity for the Grand Prairie region, for the city specifically, but for the region as a whole. It will bring 234 new beds, 2 radiation vaults, bringing radiation and chemotherapy to Grand Prairie as the 5th city in Alberta to offer these services and ensure our residents aren't needing to travel to Edmonton or elsewhere for treatment. But it also opens up new opportunities for businesses and support services and those ancillary services required in order to support bringing new specialties to the region. The hospital also has 43,000 square feet dedicated for GPRC programming. This is a combination of teaching classrooms and the Ivascovich Center for Health and Innovation. The job numbers, the hospital itself is expected to employ 1,500 people. Previous estimates that we had were estimated net new jobs of around 756. Those would be a combination of specialists, MDs, MDs, hospital staff, nurses, and healthcare professionals. And finally, I do always like to highlight Alberta infrastructure, provincial projects such as the new composite high school replacement and the O'Brien Lake West School build. These are an indication of the strong growth that we see within the region, that strong population growth rates that I mentioned previously, and investments of $60 million and $36 million respectively into our community to ensure its continued growth. Before I wrap up, I did want to highlight Small Business Week. So Small Business Week typically occurs the second week of October each year. In 2020, we were able to join council and do a bit of a Small Business Week blitz where we went out and interviewed businesses and stopped in just to do a touch base and collect a little bit of data that we're able to start to form some metrics to report on each year. This year, obviously, Small Business Week looked a little bit different. So rather than doing a business walk, we had our business retention and expansion coordinator conducting phone surveys and reaching out to businesses just to touch in, say hi, see how things are going, and to ask a couple of quick questions. So one of the questions that we asked was, how would you rate the city of Grande Prairie as a place to do business? Our business retention expansion coordinator connected with 70 businesses and was able to successfully complete 62 surveys. So when they asked to rate the city of Grande Prairie as a place to do business, 78% rated Grande Prairie as an 8 or higher, which is a slight increase from the 74% that we saw with the same ratings from last year. As a follow-up, as a follow-up question, we had then asked, how has this changed over the past year? 3% said more negative, 65% said about the same, 24% said more or positive. In terms of the comparison to last year, this is a slight improvement. Last year, 8% said more negative, 60% said the same, and 32% said more positive. And new this year, we added a new question, just asking about their plans for expansion. Were they planning on closing or reducing the size of their operation, staying the same, or expanding? And 36% of the businesses said that they were, 36 businesses of the 62 surveyed said that they were planning to expand in either their footprint, their staffing levels, or their services that they offer. Generally, we were hearing really positive feedback from businesses who were looking for opportunities to expand, take advantage of some of the economic uptick and sense of optimism that we're starting to hear within the business community. And finally, our last question was, what can the city do to help improve business conditions? On here's a really busy slide, but we tried to capture the major themes that we heard coming out of business owners. Some of the typical answers are there around crime, taxes, and red tape. But honestly, the biggest themes that we heard around was support for advertising, getting the word out, small business highlights, and that storytelling piece. We also heard a lot around grants and incentives, which helped to confirm some of the work that we've been doing in economic development. But these are some of the major steps that we heard, and some of the things that will help to guide our work moving forward over the next year.